What's up, everybody? So I'm going to change the way I do this podcast a little bit. Instead of doing a straight timeline of my journey through maritime wrestling from 2001 right up until today in 2025, I'm going to start talking about specific events, shows I've promoted, things that have gone on over the years that I feel you guys might find interesting. Because doing a straight timeline of events is going to be very hard for me to remember everything that happened in order. It's been 24 years. There's going to be a lot of stuff I leave out. But if I do things event or topic specific, I'll remember things more that way, and I'll be able to write down a list of things that happened during that time, and it'll help me remember the stories and things. But this video is going to be even more different than that. I'm going to talk about promoting events. You see a lot of comments and things online from wrestling fans be like, why don't you use this guy? How come you're not running more shows here? Why is that show canceled? Just a litany of questions from fans that don't necessarily, and nor should they, understand the promoting side of things. When it's not something you've ever done, you're not going to fully understand everything that goes into it. So I thought I would give a little peek behind the curtain, if you will, pull back the curtain, show the Wizard of Oz, and explain a little bit more of what goes into promoting a wrestling event. Now, the bigger the show is, the bigger the more work and things that go into it. I myself, I've never done a really small show. And that's not me bragging. That's probably me being stupid. I probably should have done more small shows before I attempted to do a big show. But all of the shows I've done have been fairly big. Like, I hold the attendance record at the Halifax Forum Multi-Purpose Center, which can't actually be broken now because there's a black curtains at the back that weren't there when I was promoting shows there. That's what cuts off the fans from the backstage area. They didn't exist at that time, so we had chairs going all the way to the back. That's a record that I'm very proud of. It's stood since 2006, and there had been shows run after there before those black curtains went up, but they didn't. They weren't able to match that number. A couple of people came close. UCW had a big show there. Wrestle Center had a big show there. A couple of years ago, I did a really big outside show that had a $20,000 gate. That's something that I don't know this for sure. I've been told that is probably the highest gate for an independent show around here. Again, I have no idea if that's true or not. Just going back and looking at things, there's only a couple of other shows that could have even come close to that. But even if it's not, it's still a very big margin. Like $20,000 on a local wrestling show is a big number. And I've done other things that have been fairly big. My first show ever was it was just over 300 people, also at the Halifax Forum Multi-Purpose Center when I was 22 years old, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing at that point in time. That was back in 2003, but I've never done a small event. I've always attempted to try to do things bigger. That's just how I always saw wrestling. The smallest shows I do now would be the propeller shows, and that audience, the only reason why that, and I wouldn't necessarily say that's smaller, the audience is still a decent amount of people, but the audience is capped there because we're only allowed a certain number of people inside the building. I definitely feel like I could probably get double or triple the amount of people into that building if that building could hold that amount of people. I get tons of requests for tickets after the shows sell out. And maybe not every time, but definitely, like this show I did with Emily Wrestling. Woo, baby. We could have sold that thing pay-per-view, I think. But the amount of ticket requests for that. The very first show I did back in 2022 after the pandemic with Charlie Hubley and Moonmiss in the main event, that show sold out in 38 minutes. 38 minutes! And I could have sold 500 tickets to that particular event. And that was what we actually had to cut off tickets for the outside show as well, because we were only allowed a certain amount of people in that parking lot. And if you see pictures, you're going to be like, you could have fit 1,500 more people in that parking lot. Yes, we could have, but we weren't allowed to fit 1,500 more people in that parking lot. Fire codes and everything like that are something that you have to deal with. So I'm going to pull the curtain back here a little bit and explain how things work when promoting a show. The very first thing you do when promoting a show is you find a venue, you book a date. Now, not all venues are available all of the time. Like the venue we run the most that I'm involved in would be the Spryfield Lions Rink. Now that venue is booked up a lot more than you think. There's always something in that venue, even before we get in there that night to set up for the wrestling show. We book those dates, but the fans probably don't know this, but we book those dates a year in advance. So, and it's very, very hard to move them. We're actually attempting to move a date right now, but it's very difficult to move dates because of how busy that venue is. And when you see other promotions put other shows out there that end up being the same dates as UCW or IHW or New Breed Wrestling or Red Rock Wrestling or ECPW or whatever the case may be, or Dave Boyce Championship Wrestling. I run Sundays to avoid everybody. But it's because a lot of those promotions have to book their dates so far in advance, and those are the only dates the venue happens to be available. Nobody out there is trying to book March 20th for I don't know if that's a date. Trying to book March 20th, let's just say, for 3 different promotions in 3 different places and cut the roster down for all 3 shows. Nobody is trying to do that, but unfortunately sometimes because of venue availability, that is the only option out there. So we book those dates in advance and just hope nobody else has to book those dates. We are asked, we got asked a couple of times over the last few weeks before all these dates were announced what our dates were. I sent the dates to the people ahead of time, but unfortunately some of those dates were conflicting with other promotions, and there's nothing that can be done. They can't move their dates because they have to book them in advance. We can't move our dates because we have to book them in advance. There is one particular date, like I said, we are trying to move now, but there's no guarantee that is going to be a possibility just because on how much the venue is booked up and it's not available all of the time. People think because UCW runs in Spryfield that nothing goes on there. Everything goes on at that building. That's the first thing you do. You contact a venue, get a date, and hope nobody else is running that date. And then you have to get insurance for that venue and for the show, which is, when it comes to pro wrestling, you might think getting insurance because you can get car insurance or house insurance or anything else. Getting insurance for a pro wrestling event is difficult. I won't go into specifics, but we were planning a show for the beginning of March, somewhere that we haven't ran in a long time, but because of insurance reasons, that show fell apart. There was 4 of us involved trying to get this particular event, maybe 5. There was a few of us involved trying to get this particular event insured. It was never announced, so nothing's going to be canceled. But there was a group of us trying to get this particular event insured, and because of how the place wanted the event insured, it just couldn't happen. It's very difficult to get insurance sometimes for specific venues, for specific companies, and things like that. It's not just a call up your insurance company and get insurance. And some of the rates you have to pay to insure a wrestling show is absurd. Sometimes it gets close to being your entire cost of a show is mostly based with paying insurance. It's unreal. That is a giant cost that I'm sure not a lot of people, a lot of fans on the outside, even consider or even know it's a thing. It's probably the biggest cost and the hardest problem when booking a show is getting insurance. So once you get the insurance and you know that everything's gonna happen, you can have the show, you have the date, you have insurance, you start contacting a roster of people. You send out messages, hey, are you available on this date? Hey, are you available on this date? And then you have to wait and twiddle your thumbs. That's the money side. I don't know how to twiddle thumbs. You have to twiddle your thumbs and wait for them to respond. When I first started booking shows, there was no Facebook, there was no X, there was no Instagram. Email was the thing, but you had to, not everybody had it, you had to call people on the telephone, not a cell phone. You had to call their landline telephone and hope they were home. And if not, you had to, wait, this, for everybody out there that doesn't know, this is a landline telephone. You had to call this and be like, hey, Mr. Steen, are you available for a show on whatever date? And then if he was home, he'd answer. If not, you'd have to leave a voicemail and hope they got back to you when you were home. That's how it worked. So you were playing phone tag with people across the country if you were bringing people in, which is what I did for my first show, and trying to get a hold of them. Nowadays, you would think it would be so much easier to send out a message on Facebook Messenger and get a response. While most people get back to you in a reasonable time frame, there's some people out there that take forever. Some people just don't use Facebook Messenger a lot. Some people are busy with families and kids and their jobs and everything like that. Like, I don't expect to get a response from everybody instantly. So that's not a thing. And if it takes you 6 weeks, it takes you 6 weeks. And if that means you aren't going to do you can't do the show because you don't respond, that means you can't do the show because you don't respond. And that's totally okay. I don't expect anybody to drop anything ever to be like, hey, New Scott's messaging, I gotta answer that right away. See if that date's, like, people have lives, people have things. So that's sometimes why people don't end up on shows, because they just don't respond to messages. But generally, people get back to you and say they're available, they're not available. We have a ton of promotions. Somebody sent me the number the other day. I don't remember the exact amount, but it's a lot of promotions running in the Maritimes. And when other people run specific days, that leaves specific talent not available. And it's not only just the Maritimes. Some of these people travel across Canada, down to the United States. So we also have to compete with those shows as well when trying to get dates. It's very hard. You might think, like, because you see the same group of people together almost every show with one or two, you would think that it's just like, oh, everybody's available for June 3rd. It's not how it works. A lot of people, some people have to change things. Some people have to check with their work. Some people have to check with their wives to see if they have any plans, or girlfriends, like, are they going away? Do they have a vacation? Can they get time off from their job? There's a litany of things that people have to do. Nobody does this full time here. So everybody has to deal with other things in other situations. Now, this next part, I'm going to speak specifically for myself. A lot of people ask, how come you don't use this person? How come you don't use that person? I have to be able to walk you in to a sponsor's office or place of business and present you to them being like, this is a person I'm using on my show. This is why they are a good person. This is why they could represent your company. If the first thing that happens when they Google this person's name, it comes up, they have a criminal history. They have done something negative in the community. And I know you're going to say that WWE employs, like, the Usos and the Hardys are coming back and things like that. WWE is a billion-dollar global company. It's very different. If somebody in the area, your local area, has done something negative in your local area, do you really expect that to be able to put them on a poster and people from that same area go and support that show that that person is on? Like, that makes sense, right? Like, if you Google someone's name and it comes up that they did this in the same place that you're promoting a show, do you really expect the community to get behind that person? No. So that's going to cost me money. That's going to cost, because I'm going to lose that sponsor. Other sponsors aren't going to want to sponsor the show. Sponsorship is a big thing. Sponsors are a big deal. Like, and it's not just, and that's just one part of it. Sponsorships and having a good reputation is just one part of it. But how do you expect, even sponsorships aside, to have people in the community support your show when you're using people that have done things negatively to the community or to other people in the community? For me personally, I don't care how good of a professional wrestler you are. That is the last thing I look at. You could be the best pro wrestler between the ropes, bell to bell, that has ever lived. If you are not presentable to a sponsor, if you are not presentable to the local community, I am never, ever going to hand you money to represent me, my brand, my company, or my sponsors. You have to be a good person first before I will ever consider using you on a show. If you're a negative human being, if you spew hatred out there, if you're just not somebody I enjoy being around, it's my company, my shows. I can do whatever I want. I will never hand somebody money if I feel they are not a good person. And I get to make that judgment whether I feel they are a good person or not, because it's my show and my company. Now, that is specifically just for me. Maybe other companies out there don't care who's representing them. Maybe they don't care that the people on their posters aren't good people. They're just good wrestlers. But I cannot expect people in the community to support me, my brand, or my company if I am using somebody that just isn't a good person. That's why you won't see some specific people on shows I am at and that I am involved with. Other people are more than free to use whoever they want. So once you get the roster together, once you get a roster of wrestlers together that you feel good with presenting to the community, that you feel are good, upstanding people, that you feel will put on a good show for the people, now it's time to book the show. This is when you figure out what you're going to do. You put the matches together, you figure out the storylines that are going into this particular show, and you present it. And you send it to the group chat on Facebook or wherever, and you tell people this is what's going to happen. And this is when you get a few side messages from people being like, why don't you do this? Why are you doing this? Why is this here? Why is that there? Why is this in that order? Why do I have to lose to him? How come I can't work this guy? How come I can't win this match? Yada, yada, yada. You would be blown away by the amount of people that feel that winning and losing in a predetermined sport, in a community center, in Truro or Moncton or Spryfield or wherever, means so much. Maybe if you're getting paid millions of dollars and it's your career and blah, 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 maybe it means something more then. But winning and losing, to me, means absolutely nothing. It couldn't mean less. As long as you're going out there, I will book you to lose 10 matches and give you a title shot on the 11th if your 10 performances are incredible. That's how I look at things. It's not wins or losses in a predetermined sport. It's the performance. It's the show that person puts on. If you're going out there losing every single match and you're still the most over person on the show, that's professional wrestling. That's what matters, is the performance. It's not whether you win or lose. Nobody's ever won or lost anything in pro wrestling. I take it, the pencil, write it down on a piece of paper, and you go do it. That's what pro wrestling is. To me, wins or losses don't matter, but you would be shocked by the few people that think it is actually a thing. It's bananas to me. Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with it a ton, but I've definitely had to deal with people complaining I'm being disrespected because you're making me lose. Like, it's the dumbest thing ever to me. So once you deal with that, once you get the show together, during all of this is when you're also advertising the shows. You're getting someone to make your graphics. You're getting a company to print the posters. You're getting someone to go out and put the posters up on poles in freezing, frigid winter temperatures. You're getting somebody to do all of that and making sure that they're actually doing that. Because just because you give someone a bunch of posters doesn't mean they're actually going to go put them up. Someone like me, I do it all myself because I know I can trust myself to go actually do it. And if you see a local wrestling poster on a pole somewhere for a show that I'm involved with, odds are I put that poster up. Someone like Dave also will go out and poster like crazy for most of his events. Like, I don't know when this is going to air, but Dave Boyce Championship Wrestling has a show in Mount Uniacke this Sunday. And he was out postering a bunch for that show, also in the freezing cold temperatures, stapling posters to frozen poles. Like, that's just what we do. So that's something else you have to consider is the advertising and how much money you're going to spend on advertising. You would not believe the amount of people and amount of companies out there that spend zero on advertising and then wonder why they don't draw. I will never understand it. You could have Hulk Hogan versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at your local community center, and nobody's going to be there if they don't know the show is happening. You have to put a good portion of money into advertising your show if you want people to be there. And that's something that I really pride myself on, is the amount of advertising I do for my events. I always do the work. There are a few people out there that do the work. Sheldon McLean in Cape Breton does the work and draws extraordinarily well for East Coast Pro Wrestling. He's a promoter up there. He does just about everything himself as well. Like I just said, Dave does all the work for his shows. I do it for a bunch of the shows I'm involved in. I can only speak specifically for things that I see or things that I know. There's probably other promotions and other promoters out there that do it as well. But I can tell you, just from being out there and knowing other shows are going on in the community, there's other people that out there that don't promote. They don't put up posters. Do posters help a ton? I actually don't believe they do, but it's not an avenue I'm willing to risk. Even if you put up 1,000 posters and you get 10 people to a show, that's worth it to me, because that's 10 new fans that you weren't going to get before, and that's 10 new fans paying $20, $30 a ticket. That's a lot of money. Might not sound like a lot of money, but we don't generate generally a ton of money. So those 10 new fans, maybe next time they'll each bring a new person with them, and that's 20 new fans. You know, that's how it works. So that's why I still continue to poster, because I don't want to leave any avenue untouched. And then you have like a Facebook presence, and you put money into Facebook ads or Instagram ads. You contact a local radio station perhaps if you're having a really big show and work out a deal with them. Or if there's a local community newspaper in your area, you contact them. These are things that I do for every show that I actually promote. If it's not my promotion, I still do a lot of the stuff, but it's up to the promoter to decide what he wants me to do for his show. So once you're doing the advertising, you're also selling the tickets. You have to, if you do physical tickets, you have to design the tickets, get them printed, and mail them out to the fans. If you're doing it online, which in my opinion is the best way to do it, unfortunately that's not a thing that all companies do, but it is the easiest way for fans, I think 100%, is to sell tickets online. Hopefully one day we can all move in that direction to streamline it and make it easier for fans, but you have to make sure fans know the show is happening. You have to make sure they get the tickets. You have to make sure there's no difficulty of them getting tickets when they get in the door. And you have to have someone numbering the seats the day of the show as to how the seating plan. We don't have straight seats set all the time, like if you were at the Halifax Forum or the Metro Center, like those seats are numbered. We have to put the seats out according to the seating map every time, and somebody has to go around with numbers that they printed off at home on their computer and put them on the seats so that people know where their seats are that they paid for tickets if they get reserved seats. There's so much that goes into it that people have absolutely no idea about, but those are things. So once the seats are all there, everybody shows up, and then you get cancellations on the day of the show. People, like, maybe they're stuck behind a train and they can't get to the show on time, or they have someone is sick at home, or they have a family emergency, or things like that. So there's often cancellations the day of a show, and then that leaves you scrambling, because then you're down a person. And you have to be like, who's in the area, who can make the show, because then that person is going to end up traveling by themselves, which costs more transportation if they're coming from out of town, or if they're coming from local. That's a better situation as well. But there isn't always somebody available because they weren't booked to perform on that date. So clearly they made other plans. So there you are, few hours to go, on the phone, calling so-and-so and being like, are you available? No. 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 Are you available? Yes. Okay, I'll be there, but I can't come until this time, and I have to leave right after because of prior obligations. So those are things that you have to do as well. Like, cancellations are a big thing, especially like this time of the year in the winter when the roads are really bad. It could be super nice in Halifax, but absolutely terrible weather in St. John and in Moncton, where a lot of people come from, and they can't get to the show because of the weather there. And the fans in attendance in Halifax, where it's nice and sunny, don't understand that there's a massive snowstorm in Fredericton, and a bunch of the people from the roster come from Fredericton, and that's why they're not at this show. And then you have to rent the truck. Go pick up that truck. Hope that truck is at U-Haul or wherever when you get there, because there's been times when we've gotten there and the truck that we had reserved isn't available, and because the person didn't bring it back. So then you're panicking, calling other truck companies, being like, do you have a truck? Do you have a truck? And it's very hard to get a truck the day of. Thankfully, that's not something that happened very often. It happened once where we absolutely weren't able to get a truck because there was none available. The person that rented the one that we had didn't bring it back. Luckily, we had a secret ring that doesn't exist anymore across the street from the venue, and we walked the ring across the street. Like, that is a 1 in a million situation. Never happened before. It'll never happen again. But luckily, we had a ring within walking distance, so we were able to get another ring to the venue. But now, before and after that, if the truck's not available, what are we going to do? The ring isn't in walking distance generally to the show, so that means the show's got to get canceled. Like, those are things that happen. And then you got to find somebody that's comfortable driving a 16, 20, 26-foot U-Haul, because not everybody is comfortable doing that. And then you have to drive that U-Haul to the place where the ring is, hope people show up to load the ring. That's also a thing that doesn't happen. And then load the ring, go to the show, unload the ring, set up, do the show, tear down, reload the truck, bring the truck back to where it comes from, unload it, bring the truck back to U-Haul, use their insanely difficult sometimes app to return the truck, because it's always after midnight, and they're obviously closed, so you can't do anything in person. So they have an app, you have to do it, and it's super annoying. It has gotten easier, but those are things that have to be done as well. It's never as simple as just, let's put a show together, show up, and do it. Hopefully this gives them a little bit more insight into what we do into promoting a show. And then with all of that, unfortunately, not everybody gets along with everybody else, but the majority of people still remain somewhat professional. But there's people out there that will call other people's venues and attempt to get their shows canceled. It's an absolutely despicable thing for somebody else to do to another company. I don't care how much I dislike you. I don't care how much we don't get along. Simply for the fans, I would never call someone else's venue and try and attempt to get a show canceled. But that is something that happens more often than you would ever suspect. There's just some people out there that are not good people, that you see people claim to be like this amazing person online, and they have tons of followers and people that support them. It's like, hey, venue, so-and-so has a show booked here. And then they tell a whole bunch of lies, make stuff up, or say things that you've already explained to the venue and they already know it. But yet they're still trying to get shows canceled because they're just garbage people. Those are things that we have to deal with as well. I don't know. I think that might be everything. If I've forgotten things, like if you're flying people in, you have to contact the airline, book a plane ticket, get someone to pick that person up. Hopefully the plane is on time. Hopefully the flight doesn't get canceled. And then you got to get that person a hotel room, so you got to book the hotel room. All these additional costs. And then you got to get someone to pick them up, drive them to the hotel, go back to the hotel to pick them up, bring them to the show, bring them back to the hotel, go back and pick them up, take them back to the airport, and then come back home again. You got to find somebody that's able to do all of that. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I may have forgotten. And if there's a few things that I'm completely leaving out, I can definitely add to it in another video. I think that's it. Those are just some of the things we have to deal with when putting a show together. And at the end, you may think it's complaining, but at the end of the day, when the show's done and it comes off and it's an incredible show, it's all worth it. It's always all worth it. I've never been disappointed at the end of the show when the fans are cheering and clapping, and if it's an all ages show, the kids are having an amazing time and there's smiles on their faces. That's what it's all about. That's it's such a good feeling, and it's worth it at the end of the day when the kids are smiling, they're wearing their favorite local wrestler's t-shirt, or they have an 8x10 they just got signed. It makes all of the difficulties that I just explained more than worth it. It's I've never been like, oh, why did I do all that work? This sucked. It's not worth it. Never. It's an incredible feeling. And it's so worth it. It's so good. But I think that's it. I think those are all the things that people may or may not know about what we do every day. And it's literally an everyday thing. Probably not a day goes by where I have to do something for a local wrestling company. And I'm not the type of person out there that wants the credit for everything that they do. I would never you have to tag me in this because I made this. I think that's, I don't know, for me, that's just weird. I guess I get it, but it's just not something I ever asked. There's a lot of stuff you see out there that I've done or had a part in that nobody knows, and that's totally fine. Nobody needs to know. I'm just doing it to help out so-and-so. And that's not just me. There's a lot of people out there that do things that you'll never see their name attached behind anything, and they've done so much work on that particular project, and everyone else is taking credit, clamoring for credit because they feel that they need it, and meanwhile the person that did most of the work isn't getting it, and it's just because they don't care. They know they did it. The people that matter know they did it, and that's all that matters to them, and that's the same way I am as well. But yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, if I think of anything else, I'll add it to another video. Hope you enjoyed this video into what it takes to promote a show. Have a good day. I'll see you again soon.